Two men are born on the same day. Both of them die at 72, not a day more for either one. No warning. Same age, same ending, same amount of time on the earth down to the year. The only thing that's different is what they did with the money in between. One of them saved. Every raise, he put more away. He drove the car until it died. He skipped the trip, packed the lunch, kept the coat another winter. Not because he was miserable, but because he was building something, and the something was always slightly further off than the moment he was in. The other one spent. Not recklessly, not into debt. He just took the trip. He bought the good seats. He said yes to the dinner, the weekend, the thing his kid wanted to do that cost more than it should have. He ended most years with a little less saved than he could have, and a little more lived than he'd have had otherwise. Same salary, same 40 years, same 72. And I want to be honest with you about what this video can and can't do right up front, because the topic invites a kind of cheap wisdom that I'm not interested in selling you. It cannot tell you how to live. Anyone who makes a video like this and ends it by telling you the answer is lying, because the answer depends on a number none of us are allowed to see. What it can do is show you the shape of the bet you're already making, the one you make with every unremarkable financial decision without ever calling it a bet, and let you make it with your eyes open instead of closed. That's all. That's the whole offer. And here's the trap this video is going to walk you into, so let me disarm it now at the start before it can do its work on you. You already think you know which man was right, and whichever one you picked him because of something about you, not something about them. The saver looks wise to a certain kind of person and tragic to another. The spender looks free to one and foolish to the next. You're not going to watch two men in this video. You're going to watch a mirror twice. So watch which one you're defending as we go. That's the real experiment here. Every time you feel yourself wanting one of them to be right, every time you catch yourself building the case for the saver's wisdom or the spender's freedom, that's you, telling yourself which bet you've already placed with your own life. The verdict you reach about these two men is really a confession about the one you're living. Because both of these men made a bet, the exact same bet, pointed in opposite directions. And the bet was about a number neither of them could see, the number 72. Let's watch them make it. They're 25, both broke, both starting. The saver does the thing you're supposed to do, and he does it beautifully. He reads the compounding chart. He understands correctly that the dollar he saves at 25 is worth more than the dollar he saves at 50. And that's real. We've done that math on this channel. It's not a trick. So he starts, and it works, and something else starts alongside it that he doesn't notice. He develops a relationship with the future that slowly eats the present. And it eats it so gently that it never once feels like loss. That's the mechanism you have to understand, because it's the same one operating in you. He doesn't experience the stayed-home weekend as a sacrifice. He experiences it as a small victory, a line going up, a good decision confirmed. The present doesn't scream when you trade it away. It just quietly isn't there later, unrecorded. And by the time you'd want it back, there's no receipt proving it ever existed, because a weekend you didn't take leaves no evidence at all. It's subtle at first. A friend suggests a weekend away and he does a quick calculation, and it's not that he can't. He can. It's that he can see the version of that money in 30 years grown, and next to that number, the weekend looks expensive. So he stays home. And he's right. The money did grow. The weekend is gone. The spender goes on the weekend. He doesn't do the calculation. Or he does it and overrides it. He's got a sense, not a philosophy, just a sense, that the weekend is happening now at 25 in this body, with these particular friends who will not all be reachable at 50, and that this specific configuration of things is not coming back. He's right too. That's the part nobody tells you. They're both right. They're just right about different things. and the things won't be reconciled for another 47 years. And notice neither of them is being stupid. That's what makes this worth 20 minutes instead of 30 seconds. The saver isn't a miser, and the spender isn't a hedonist. They're two reasonable men, looking at the same finite amount of money in the same infinite seeming amount of time, and drawing the one conclusion each of them can live with. The disagreement isn't about money at all. It's about a fact neither of them will admit they don't know how long this goes on. They're 35. The saver's account is real now. Not huge, but real, enough that he can feel the momentum, and the momentum is intoxicating in a quiet way. He checks it more than he'd admit. Watching it grow has become one of the genuine pleasures of his life, and there's nothing wrong with that, except that it's a pleasure that specifically rewards not spending, which means every year the not spending gets easier and the spending gets harder. He's not depriving himself anymore. That's the thing. It stopped being deprivation and became identity. He's a saver now. It's who he is. People know it about him, and you cannot spend money without contradicting yourself once being frugal is who you are. So he doesn't, and the account climbs, and he is genuinely, uncomplicatedly proud of it. And he should be on the numbers. If you froze the video here at 35 and asked which man was living correctly, the honest answer is the saver. And it's not close. He's ahead. He's secure. He's doing the thing every responsible voice in his life told him to do. And it's working exactly as promised. Any story that pretends otherwise at year 10 is lying to you to make a point. The bill for the saver's choice doesn't arrive early. That's precisely what makes it so easy to keep making. The spender at 35 has less money and more photographs. He's been to the places. He's got a marriage that had a real honeymoon in it. And kids who have a father who was actually there for the expensive, irreplaceable things, because he decided early that those were the things worth being underwater for briefly on purpose. He worries sometimes. At 3 in the morning, occasionally, the number that isn't there worries him. He's not a fool. He knows he's carrying less cushion than he should, but he's made a peace with it, and the peace holds most nights, and in the daylight, he mostly thinks he's doing it right. Neither of them is suffering. Hold on to that. This is not a story about a happy man and a sad man. Both of these men are, at 35, basically content in different currencies. And if either of them saw the other's life from the inside, he'd feel a pang. The saver, looking at the spender's photographs, feels something he'd never name, a sense of years passing that he's watching accumulate in a number instead of a memory. The spender, looking at the saver's account, feels the 3 a.m. fear in daylight for a second. Each of them has exactly the thing the other one gave up, and neither of them can have both, and that's not a flaw in either plan. That's the price of admission to having a plan at all. They're 50. Now the saver has something substantial, and this is the moment his whole strategy was built for. This is where it starts to pay off, where the compounding gets loud, where the numbers finally get big enough to be exciting. And he discovers something he did not budget for. He can't turn it off. 25 years of training himself not to spend has produced a man who cannot spend, and now that he finally has enough that he should, now that a nice thing wouldn't even dent the total, he stands at the edge of the purchase and cannot make himself do it. The muscle that says no has gotten so strong it fires on its own. He's got the money for the trip now, and he doesn't take the trip. And the reason isn't the money anymore. There's no reason left. It's just who he is. This is the part that should frighten the savers watching more than the early death does, because it's the part you can't blame on bad luck. He didn't just save money, he rewired himself. 40 years of a daily no builds a person for whom yes is a foreign language. And you do not get to flip that switch at retirement just because the spreadsheet finally says you may. The habit outlives its own purpose. He optimized so hard for the future that he became someone the future can't use. He's building a retirement he's no longer sure he knows how to use. The spender at 50 has had a scare, a real one, a bill or a gap or a year that went wrong, and it frightened him, and he tightened up, and he saved harder for a couple of years than he ever had. He caught some of it back, not all. He'll never have what the saver has. But he looks at his life at 50 and the ledger of it, the trips taken, the kids raised close, the marriage that got its honeymoon. And on most days, he'd make the same bet again. On most days, not all. And that qualifier is the most honest thing in this video so far because it's true of both of them. There is no version of either life without the pang. The spender has nights, the saver has mornings. Anyone selling you a philosophy of money that promises to remove the pang entirely is selling you the same lie in a different costume, because the pang isn't a symptom of choosing wrong. It's the sound of a finite person spending a finite life, and it comes standard with being alive. They're 65. Retirement, the saver has won. Let's be completely clear about that, because it's true, and the video doesn't work if I fudge it. He has a large number. He has security, options, the ability to handle anything that comes. He did the responsible thing for 40 years, and the responsible thing worked exactly as advertised. He is safe in a way the spender will never be. And he has 7 years left, and he doesn't know that, and neither do you yet, except you do, because I told you at the start. He sits down at 65 with his large number and makes a plan to finally start living, because that was always the deal he made with himself. Save now, live later. Later has finally arrived. He's been sending money to a man in the future for 40 years, and he has finally today become that man. And the man is 65 and tired and set in his ways and no longer wants most of the things he was saving for. The concert he'd have loved at 30 exhausts him now. The trip he deferred is a lot of airports for a body that started to complain. There's a specific cruelty to this that the numbers can't hold. The things he saved for weren't abstract. He had a list, even if he never wrote it down. Places, experiences, a version of himself, relaxed and generous and finally free, that he was funding one deferral at a time. And that man was supposed to be waiting at 65 to receive it all. But the man who showed up to collect wasn't that man. 40 years of saving had built the account, and in the same motion disassembled the person who was meant to enjoy it. He didn't just defer the spending, he deferred it past the point where the thing he was buying still worked. That's the sentence the compounding charts never print. They show you the money growing. They do not show you the buyer aging alongside it, quietly at the same time, so that the two curves, the money going up and the capacity to enjoy it coming down, cross somewhere you didn't plan for. The chart says he's richer every year. It doesn't mention that every year the money is worth a little less to the specific man who'll get to spend it, because that man is getting older while he waits. The spender retires with much less. He'll have to be careful. It won't be luxurious, but he's not retiring into his life. He already had it. That's the difference nobody sees until right here. Think about what that actually means mechanically. The spender didn't need retirement to rescue him because he never postponed his life to a date. He'd been withdrawing from the account of living the whole time in small, frequent, irreversible amounts. So there was no lump sum of unlived life waiting to be claimed at 65. He'd claimed it as he went, which means the one catastrophe that destroys the saver, running out of time before you start, was a catastrophe the spender had structurally made impossible, not on purpose, just by never waiting. The spender front-loaded the living. He took it while it was cheap, while his body worked and his kids were small and his friends were all still alive and reachable. And now, at 65, He's not desperately trying to start. He's just continuing on a smaller budget, something he never stopped doing. 72. They both die. Same year, same age. The thing I promised you at the start. And now we do the only thing that matters, which is stand at the end of both lives and count what's actually there. The saver leaves $800,000 to someone. Kids, a charity, a nephew. It's a real gift, and it does real good, and none of this is going to pretend that money left behind is worthless, because it isn't. He provided. Even in dying, he provided. That was the whole shape of him, and it held to the end. But here's the sentence, and it's the one the whole video is walking toward. He spent 40 years converting his life into money, and then he died before he could convert it back. That's the risk nobody prices. That's the bet. Saving is a bet that you'll get the years on the other end to spend it in, and it's a bet you make silently every time you defer against a number you're not allowed to see. He bet on being 85. He got 72. The house always has the edge, and the house is time. And he never even knew he'd placed a bet. That's the quiet horror of it. He thought he was being safe. Saving is the safe thing. Everyone agrees. Saving is the safe thing. And the entire time, every act of deferral was a chip pushed onto a single square. The square that says, I will get the years back later. It's the least examined gamble a person makes, precisely because it wears the costume of prudence. Nobody thinks they're gambling when they're saving. That's what makes it the biggest bet in the room, and the edge is bigger than one death. Run it across everyone who ever saved. Most of them do get the years, and for them the saver's bet pays, and they retire comfortable, and this whole video looks like an argument against a man who doesn't exist. But some meaningful fraction gets 72 instead of 85, and they are not a rounding error. They are real people who did everything right and got a receipt they never collected on. You don't know, sitting here, which group you're in. That's the entire discomfort of it. You're being asked to place the bet without being shown the odds for your specific life. Now, and this is the part where I have to be honest, or this whole thing is just a pretty lie told to make spenders feel better. The spender didn't win either, because there's a version of this video that ends right there on Live for Today, You Could Die Tomorrow, and it's garbage, and you've seen it 100 times, and it's wrong. If the spender had died at 90 instead of 72, he'd have spent his last 18 years poor and frightened. And this video would be lecturing you about the saver's wisdom and the spender's foolishness with exactly the same confidence. The spender didn't make the right bet. He made the opposite bet, and it happened to pay, and if the number had been 90, it would have ruined him. They both gambled. One bet on a long life and lost it. One bet on a short life and won it. And they only look like a wise man and a fool because we're standing at 72, where the coin happened to land. That's the actual lesson, and it's harder than the one you came here for. You don't get to see the number. Nobody does. The whole game is played blind. And that means the entire framing, save versus spend, wise versus foolish, responsible versus free, is the wrong frame. Because both extremes are just leveraged bets on a coin flip you can't see. The man who saved everything bet his whole life that he'd get old. The man who spent everything bet his whole life that he wouldn't. And both of them gave up the same thing to make the bet, the middle. Because there was a third man. There's always a third man. And you resisted him this whole time, even before I introduced him, because he ruins the story. A video needs two men to make a point. Life doesn't. The two extremes are vivid and quotable, and each one flatters somebody, and the third man is none of those things. He's just correct quietly, in a way that doesn't photograph well. He saved enough, not everything. Enough. He took the weekend at 25 and funded the account. He said yes to the trip that mattered and no to the 3 that didn't. He carried a cushion that let him sleep in a life that was worth being awake for. And he did it by refusing the one thing both of the other men found so seductive: the clean, total, identity-defining answer. Saving everything is easy in a way. It's a rule. Spending everything is easy too. It's also a rule. You decide once, and you never have to think again. The hard thing, the thing almost nobody does, is holding both at the same time every year in tension without ever getting to resolve it, spending like you might die at 72 and saving like you might live to 100, and never knowing which one you're right about until it's over. That man doesn't get a dramatic ending. That's why nobody makes videos about him. He didn't leave a fortune, and he didn't die mid-regret. He just lived a life that was pretty good the whole way through and ended without a large surplus of anything: money or regret. He's the answer, and he's boring, and that's exactly why he's the answer. And here's why nobody lives like him, even though everybody hearing this agrees he got it right. Because the middle has no identity in it. You can't build a personality out of enough. The saver gets to be the responsible one. The spender gets to be the free one. Both of them get a story about themselves that they can tell at a party. The man in the middle gets nothing to be. He just quietly holds two contradictory truths at once for 40 years and dies without a slogan. That's a much harder thing to be than either extreme, and it comes with no applause, which is exactly why the extreme stays so crowded. So the two men die at 72 on the same day they were born, 47 years after they made their bets. One of them turned his life into money and ran out of time to change it back. The other one turned his money into life and got lucky that the bill never came due. And the thing to sit with, the thing this whole video is actually about, is that you are making this exact bet right now, today, with this afternoon. You are either deferring it or spending it, leaning saver or leaning spender. And you're doing it against a number you will never be allowed to see until the day it's the only number that matters. You don't have to pick an extreme. That's the trap, and it's the one both of them fell into. You just have to remember that later is not guaranteed, and neither is old age. And the only moment anyone has ever actually been able to spend is the one they're standing in. They were both wrong. Try to be the boring man. And if that landing feels unsatisfying, sit with why. You came in wanting a winner. You wanted the video to hand you a side so you could feel good about the way you already lean and get on with your afternoon. The reason it can't is that there's no side, there's only a coin and a blindfold and a life being spent one afternoon at a time, whether you're paying attention or not. The boring man isn't the answer because he's virtuous. He's the answer because he's the only one who admitted he couldn't see the coin.